What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Shadowlands video. How's everybody doing? I hope you're having a fantastic day. I hope that you've got some coffee. That's the most important thing in life. I have a confession to make. I'm not gonna lie. I almost started this video without my scarf on again, and if I had done that, I think I just have to uninstall the whole thing, and that'd be the last video I think that you guys see me, because clearly that would be a massive failure on my part, and can't have that happen. So thank you for the last stream for you guys yelling at me to keep my scarf on. I feel like in the summertime this is going to be a serious issue, but for now it's fine. Whatever. I'm not even worried about it. I'm not going to even think about that. That's a future Zuko problem, not a current Zuko problem. Okay, let's get our notes. What are we talking about today? What are we talking about today? Let me put this up here. Well, we're talking about deeply rooted elements, of course, which, in my opinion, is going to be the most fun. I was going to say the funnest. That's not a word, right? I think it's the most fun you can probably have as an Ellie Shaman, in my opinion. I don't know that this build is going to be the most consistent. I mean, I know it's not going to be the most consistent, because this is a legendary that's based on a proc chance. However, it's never been easier to get that proc chance in the expansion than it is now. And when you do get it, it is incredibly fun. And I think that it genuinely opens up a new form of AoE. And we're going to get into all of that in the video in a minute. So in the video, obviously, let's break it down. We're going to talk about what does deeply rooted elements do for Elemental Shaman. What is our stat priority? I'm going to talk a bit about the legendary dependency, the 2x legendary dependency. We're going to talk about talents, and we're going to focus a lot on Fire Ellie versus Storm Ellie. We're going to look at the tier set bonus, which is incredibly good for this build. Incredibly good. Lots of synergies there. Then we're going to talk about the covenants, of course. Which one do you want to choose? And then we're going to go to the gameplay, and then I'm going to tell you where to craft this thing. So kick back, relax, get a coffee, get going, and let's jump into this video. So first and foremost, what does deeply rooted elements do for Elemental Shaman? Of course, when you cast Lava Burst, you have a 7% chance to activate Ascendance for 6 seconds. I think for Enhanced Shaman, it's 8% chance. Because it's a little bit harder, I think, for them to generate Storm Strikes versus the amount of Lava Bursts that you can generate with an Elemental Shaman. Also, Mastery helps to proc an additional Lava Burst, right? Which can also trigger Deeply Rooted, which I think is why the percentage is 1% less. So, not actually that big of a deal. It might look like oh my gosh, why is it lower than the enhanced one? It doesn't actually matter. I think Blizzard saw that and was like, well, we need to nerf it a little bit, because if the proc chance is too high, then it just becomes really stupid. So one thing I will say about the deeply rooted thing, and I said this in my enhancement video as well, they need to change this type of legendary. If they ever make legendaries that are like this, where they have a chance to proc your most powerful cooldown, I think they need to make some slight adjustments to these kinds of legendaries in the future. And here's what the adjustment would be. The wording stays the same. Casting Lava Burst has a 7% chance to activate Ascendance. And every 30 seconds or every 40 seconds, your next Lava Burst will activate Ascendance. So there's a guaranteed proc there. And you could have some sort of weak aura that tracks it, and it would know, or the game would just know, have something that tracks it for you. And you could say, okay, my Lava Burst is coming up. The one that's all going to be juiced, and it's going to activate Ascendance for me. Let me make sure I've spread all my Flame Shocks around. Let me make sure I get maximum value out of Ascendance, right? And it's just, that would be really cool for a legendary like this, to give it some consistency. Because right now, it's just a proc chance, and you can get some dungeons where it just doesn't really proc as much. It might proc like half as much as it did in the previous dungeon. So just a little thing that would be kind of cool to see. But for now, we have this. And of course, what does Ascendance do for Ellie Shaman? It's important to understand, when you transform into an Ascendant, it replaces Chain Lightning with Lava Beam. It removes the cooldown on Lava Burst, so you can just spam Lava Bursts, which is really nice. And then it also increases your increases your damage by your critical strike chance. So the damage of Lava Burst goes up by an amount equal to your critical strike chance. So when you do proc Ascendance, you need to be pressing Lava Burst. That's the point. And then, of course, the biggest part of it is that when you transform, when you actually hit this button or get this proc, you launch Lava Bursts at anybody who has Flame Shock on them. So it's a very strong, powerful cooldown. It's really incredible, actually, if you look at the details of it. So the two things that are most important there is that you launch Lava Bursts at everybody that has Flame Shock on them, and that your Lava Burst damage goes up by an amount equal to your crit chance. Now, we've seen in this build, we've seen in my character, sorry, that I don't actually have a lot of crit. So it might be worth it to run a little bit more crit, but I'm actually going to pivot away from that right now. We're going to talk about stats and what stats do you really want to be running. So I think that Mastery is really, really important here. And crit is also going to be good because you're going to be getting a lot of those Ascendance procs, and then your damage is just going to go up on Lava Burst because you're getting those Ascendance procs. Does that make sense? So, like, crit is also important. But I'm just going to sit on this guy. Crit's pretty important because of the Ascendance interaction, of course. But I think Mastery is equally important or even more important because you want your Lava Burst to be getting thrown as many times as possible. You want the overloads to be sending more Lava Bursts. The more Lava Bursts you're sending, the higher chance you have of getting this extra proc. I was going to say crit, proc. You're trying to get the proc on Ascendance. That's what you're trying to do with this entire legendary setup. That's all you're trying to do. So, important to have as many Lava Bursts going at a time as you can. So, I think if you have crit or Mastery, it's okay. I'm valuing Mastery higher. I think Mastery is actually higher. Because if you get a trigger on Elemental Overload on your Lava Burst, it has a higher chance to proc this legendary effect, which is what our entire set is about. It's all about procking this set. So, not our set, our legendary. This is what it's all about. So, let's make sure that we do that. Let's make sure that we're maximizing the amount of time that we can get Lava Bursts going towards the enemy. What does that mean? Just before I jump into talents, I do want to just take 1 second to say that I do believe very strongly that this introduces sort of a new form of AoE for Elemental Shaman, and it has mostly to do with the Chain Harvest interaction. So when we get to the Covenant choices, I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about why I think there's a new version of AoE for Elemental Shaman. But first of all, that's your stats. Crit, Mastery. You're going to want haste like normal, of course. Have like 37, 38% haste. Maybe 36 at the lowest. And then go for Mastery, in my opinion. If you have crit, it's also good. It's also fine to have crit. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Okay, talents. Let's look at the talents. Now, what I'm recommending is that you mostly take Fire Elemental. This is the most key part of this entire build. The most important piece of this whole build is making sure that you have Fire Elemental, not Storm Elemental. And you can go Master the Elements or Liquid Magma Totem. I'm actually steering more towards Liquid Magma Totem because in this build, you are spending a lot of time just pressing Lava Burst. And yes, you are supplementing it with Earthquakes, but you're not going, you know, Lava Burst into Earthquake, into Lava Burst, into Earthquake, back and forth like that. I mean, you can't really do that anyway, but my point is there are moments when your Ascendance will proc, and I'm actually just going to be pressing Lava Bursts over and over and over and over again. So, like, you're going to waste a whole bunch of these Master of the Element procs. Now, I'm not saying you can't take this and really try to work that into your build. You can, and it's perfectly fine, and you'll be buffing your Earthquake damage, which is quite strong. But Liquid Magma Totem actually just does a lot of damage all on its own. Liquid Magma Totem, you can see it's doing 3, almost 4% damage for free. This is passive. I don't have to work at this at all. I don't have to do any of this. So you're gonna see. I think that Liquid Magma Totem is actually just fine, and I think that over the course of an encounter, it's also uncapped AOE. It'll hit anybody, every 0.7 seconds. So it deals damage to all enemies within 8 yards of whoever it's targeting. So this is only 4 targets you're going to see. And I think that that's important to understand that if you had 10 targets, then this would be much, much better. So Liquid Magma Totem is there. And I just think that it's the easier choice versus Master. You don't have to think about anything else. You can just focus on your Lava Burst spamming, which is really what this build revolves around. I'm going to recommend you go Echo plus Aftershock. There is something to be said for Earth and Rage, and I think I had it on this fight. But Earth and Rage just always does like 0 damage, in my opinion, and I don't understand why it's such a low DPS. Like, having 1% extra damage from an entire talent row is not okay. Like, this talent row gave me almost 4%. This talent row gave me less than 1% of a damage boost. So instead, I'm going to switch to Echo. I'm going to recommend you go Echo because this build is entirely focused on Lava Burst, right? It's entirely focused on pressing Lava Burst as much as possible, even in an AoE setting. And we're going to get to that in a minute. So here's the setup that you're going to want to run. Go Echo. Go Aftershock. I would take Liquid Magma Totem over Master because it's easier on your brain. You don't have to be really trying to min-max the Lava Burst into Earthquake interaction. And then go Primal, and then go Stormkeeper. And this is the reason you want to go Stormkeeper right here, this line. Lava Beam Overload. This was a 2.5-minute fight that I was just testing a minute ago. I pressed Lava Beam twice, and it did over 100k. Okay? And I'll show you why in a minute. It has to do with Stormkeeper, and basically what you end up doing is you start your rotation, and then you press Stormkeeper while you're into your rotation. And right off the bat, if you get a proc on Ascendance, Chain Lightning turns into Lava Beam. And then if you have the Stormkeeper buff up, and you press Lava Beam, it gets all the overloads from Stormkeeper, because that's how Stormkeeper reads, right? Chain Lightnings, your next 2 Chain Lightnings to be instant cast and trigger Elemental Overload on every target. That's all from this. That was just 2 casts of a Stormkeeper buffed Lava Beam, and it did almost 110k. So, like, you can see the power of that. Lava Beam, of course, if you guys don't know, increases in damage each time it jumps. So it does a blast of fire damage, which again, sorry, that doesn't matter for LHM. It does a blast of fire damage, and it jumps to nearby enemies, and it will increase in damage. It doesn't say it here on the tooltip, but if I actually get the proc in game, I can try to hover over it and see. But each time it jumps, it increases its damage by 10%. That's why Lava Beam is so cool. So that's what Ascendance does. It transforms Chain Lightning into Lava Beam. If you have a Stormkeeper buff rolling while Lava Beam comes up, you can just press it twice in a row, and it'll do tons of damage. So there you go. That is why you kind of want to run that. So I think Stormkeeper is more valuable than actually taking Ascendance for this interaction that I'm talking about right here. It's also just better on AoE. It helps to continue to make your AoE extremely powerful. So that's the talents that I'm going to recommend, okay? You can go Ascendance if you want to, and then you can just trigger Ascendances into Ascendances into Ascendances, and you can just keep the buff rolling. But I actually think Stormkeeper is better, and I'll just show you once we get to the actual damage. So that's the talent tier set bonus that we want to look at. Let's look at this really quick. So this is incredibly synergistic with Deeply Rooted Elements. It says, while your fire elemental is active, your Lava Burst deals more damage. Okay, that's more reason for us to press Lava Burst. Casting Lava Burst extends your fire elemental by 1.5 seconds. This build will have a permanent fire ele because we're going to be pressing Lava Burst as much as we possibly can. And I'll show you that once we get to the gameplay. Even in an AoE situation, you're going to press Lava Burst. You have other AoE tools, and we'll get to those in a second, once we get done the Covenants. Right before the gameplay, I'm going to talk about that AoE thing again, but this tier set bonus is very simple, right? You need to press Lava Burst. If you press Lava Burst, it does more damage, and it'll extend your Elemental. On top of that, it obviously has a chance to trigger Ascendance, which is what we're trying to do. And then if you do trigger Ascendance, now your critical strike chance, which is 17%, I'm going to get 17% more damage on Lava Burst. I'm getting 20% more damage on Lava Burst from my Fire Elemental being up just all the time. And if I do trigger this as well, obviously it's going, if I do trigger Ascendance, it's going to send those extra juiced Lava Bursts at all targets with Flame Shocks. If I have 6 Flame Shocks out and I trigger Ascendance while my Elemental is active, every single one of those lava bursts that goes out and hits those flame shock targets, all those lava bursts do 20% more damage. So that's why this is so strong and so synergistic, because if you do get the proc, then you're just sending juiced lava bursts at all these targets, and that's really amazing. That's kind of what this is all about. It's all about pressing lava burst as much as possible, and that will enable more AoE damage from the Ascendance proc. And on top of that, just all the other pieces of your gear are working together to make sure that your lava burst does more damage. So very cool, 20% more damage on lava burst. And then if you do get the Ascendance proc, of course, your crit is also factored into the damage cap there. And the tier set bonus is pretty fantastic. I would say the only problem, one of the problems with this build, not the only problem, but one of the problems is that this build is incredibly reliant on the tier set bonus and the double legendaries. So like the entry point of this legendary and Covenant combination is very high. You won't really be able to use this build, in my opinion, until you have double legendaries and the tier set bonus rolling. So that's a little bit sad, because a lot of the other legendaries that we've looked at have a much lower entry point. You know, it's not that high. It's like, okay, you just need the 2-set piece for your like enhancement fire builds just to get the dogs rolling, and then you're basically good. Like that plus Primal Lava Actuators, you're off to the races. But this build in particular really does need the tier set bonus and the double legendaries before you'll start feeling the full effect of this. So maybe this is a bit later in the expansion. Might not be right out of the gates in the new patch. Maybe you want to just wait on this one a little bit before jumping into it, but it's still going to be good. Okay, Covenant choice. Let's jump into the Covenants and take a look really quick at what you want to pick. Obviously, spoiler alert, Venthyr is the premier choice here. I'll get to that in a minute. Raging Vesper Vortex, of course. This is exactly the same problem as with the, if you're taking Storm Elemental in the other Ellie Shaman builds that we looked at. You don't have time to spam Earth Shield on yourself to trigger the second effect of Raging Vesper Vortex, right? So you put Vesper Totem down, and you do your 3 damage abilities, and then you have to cast 3 healing spells to get this thing to proc twice. You don't have time. You need to press Lava Burst. If you don't press Lava Burst, you're not triggering your legendary effect, and it's just bad. So you just don't have time to deal with the clunkiness of the Raging Vesper Vortex, basically. That's why you don't want to go Kyrian. Necrolord is also not that great, because even though it does generate extra lava bursts, which is great. So like if you send, let's say you put out a Flame Shock, and then you Primordial Wave something else, and then you're going to Flame Shock a third target, then you press your Lava Burst, you're going to get 30% haste, which is great, and then that extra, you're going to send 1 extra Lava Burst at targets that are affected by your Lava Burst, or, sorry, your Flame Shock. Sorry, I'm losing my brain right here. So that's really good, because it's sending out extra Lava Bursts. You might think, okay, that's pretty fantastic, because it's like, instead of just sending out 1 Lava Burst, it's sending out 4, because you cast that Lava Burst on the 1 target, and then it sends out a Lava Burst at everybody who has Flame Shock, which is 3 additional targets. So that's 4 Lava Bursts, just boom, 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 and that gives you a high chance to trigger your Deeply Rooted Elements. Absolutely. So there is a little bit of synergy here, but the problem is that you can't spread Flame Shocks effectively. And you guys are going to see that, like, this is the entire point of this build, is to say, hey, we want to spread Flame Shocks as easily as possible, and then just dump Lava Bursts into those Flame Shocks until we get a proc. And if we get a proc, then we get to hit all of those Flame Shock targets with Lava Burst. If you go Necrolord, you don't get to spread the Flame Shocks. Not as easily as Chain Harvest. Chain Harvest puts 5 Flame Shocks up immediately. And then you just start casting Lava Burst, and you might get lucky right off the bat, and boom, you hit 5 additional targets with the Ascendance proc, which is so good. So that's the issue with the Necrolord one, is that it just takes a little bit too long to get going. You're like, Flame Shock here, I'm going to Primordial Wave over here to put an additional Flame Shock. My Flame Shock's coming back, I'll put a 3rd Flame Shock over here, and then I'll press my Lava Burst, and then boom, boom, it'll send out a Lava Burst on all those. That's only 3 targets. And it took you like 10 seconds to get 3 flame shocks up, because the cooldown of flame shock is 6 seconds and it doesn't go down with haste. So like it takes about like 10 seconds just to get 3 flame shocks out, whereas the Venthyr ability just gets 5 flame shocks out in 1.5 seconds. You see the difference there? That's why the Necrolord one just doesn't work as well, unfortunately. But it's not the worst. It's probably the second best choice if you really wanted to go Necrolord and try this build. It's about probably the second best choice. Another one that's not really good is the Fey Transfusion. We don't care about cooling down our Fire Elemental because he's going to be permanent, and we don't care about the crit chance as much. It's good. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, if we do get an Ascendance proc, then that's fantastic. But if you channel Fey Transfusion and you get this 24% crit bonus for 15 seconds, what if you only get like 1 proc of Ascendance in that 15-second window? Well, it doesn't. Then the crit like wasn't super helpful because Lava Bursts crit already on their own, right? Because of Elemental Fury. Sure, your Flame Shocks are critting a little bit, and maybe your Chain Lightning's critting, and maybe the Earthquake, but it's not focused on Earthquake. This is not Echoes of the Great Sundering, you know, which is all about crit, and it's just getting crits on your Earthquake. So the crit is wasted. In large part, it's wasted, and the cooldown reduction is entirely wasted on this. So I don't think that Night Fae is the way to go. I think the only realistic choice is going to be Venthyr because it spreads 5 Flame Shocks. It's the only way for Elemental Shaman to spread Flame Shocks. And so that's why I think it's the best choice. It's also another AoE button that supplements your AoE damage. Chain Harvest does lots of AoE damage, which is really good. But really the main thing we're looking at is getting as many Flame Shocks out as we possibly can. And if we do that, then we get Lava Surge procs like crazy, right? Flame Shocks have a 10% chance to reset the cooldown on it. And then we just press Lava Burst until we get a huge Ascendance proc. And then that's going to be extra supplemental AoE damage. We're funneling our damage with Lava Burst into one target, and then we're getting a proc that sends out more AoE damage. We get a huge blast of AoE damage. Does that make sense? That's kind of the play style. And the Venthyr Covenant really is the best one for that because it helps you to send out all those Flame Shocks for free. You just get a bunch of free Flame Shocks. So that's what I'm suggesting that you should run. I'm also suggesting you should run Theatar because Theatar gives you 550 Mastery. And I talked at the top of the video about your stat priorities. Mastery, I think, is a huge one of those. So the fact that you can just get 550 Mastery from Tubbins and Gubbins is ridiculous. It means that your chance to proc an Elemental Overload on your Lava Burst will be extremely high. And that's really, really good. So I do think that this is the way to go. I think you still want to get the Chain Harvest crit, Conduit, as well as this one is mandatory. Call of Flame is absolutely mandatory. You got to be taking this one. And then because it's you're doing lots of Chain Harvest damage, I would suggest that you take Wasteland Propriety again, because you're going to be cooling down Chain Harvest pretty quickly. You could also go Shake the Foundations. Nothing wrong with Shake the Foundations here. But I just like Wasteland Propriety. I think 6% versatility is just 6% more damage. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But once again, if you wanted to take Earthquake, the Earthquake one, you could, because we are going to be casting Earthquake quite a bit. So, yeah, those are the Covenants. Carrion is just a yikes. Night Fae, we don't care about the crit or the cooldown reduction of the Ellie. Necro, the haste is nice, and the extra Lava Burst procs on all your Flame Shock targets are nice, but we can't spread Flame Shocks quick enough. Your damage will just be so low. You know, Enhancement Shaman has the ability to spread Flame Shocks now really easily. Ellie still does not, except for Venthyr, which I think is the premier choice here. You get to spread all those extra Flame Shocks around, so that's what you guys should run. Now, let's look at some gameplay. So, how does this work? How does this actually work? Once again, I believe it's all about Lava Burst. And right before we get into the gameplay, let me just say there is a new form of AoE that you get here. And I've been talking about it throughout the video, and I'm just going to explain what that means right now. So, this is buffing your Lava Burst damage. The tier set bonus buffs your Lava Burst damage. Your Ascendance procs will also buff your Lava Burst damage by your critical strike chance. Also, it will send Lava Burst at everybody who has a Flame Shock on them. That is a form of AoE. My Lava Burst here, it procced a whole bunch of extra times, because I have this legendary, and essentially what ends up happening is you get these procs, and because it sends out all those lava bursts, and because they're 20% stronger, and then with the Ascendance proc, they're 17%, so they're 37% stronger, it's worth it to be funneling your single target damage with your lava burst, and then get those AoE procs. It's kind of like Primal Lava Actuators, where you're sending out a bunch of Flame Shocks, and they all buff the damage of your Lava Lash, and then you're kind of detonating those Flame Shocks with Fire Nova. In this build, you're sending out a bunch of Flame Shocks with Chain Harvest. It's giving you Lava Surge procs that you're funneling into one target, and then if you get a proc on Ascendance, it sends out more AoE damage to everybody else who's got Flame Shocks on them. Do you understand that? Do you understand how that works? So that's the AoE I'm talking about. The amount of procs that you will get on Ascendance is going to be pretty high, in my opinion. You'll see it as we go along here. This procced 3 times for me in the last fight, which means it sent out lava bursts at anybody who had targets who had Flame Shocks on them 3 times, which is really, really good. It's good AoE. On top of that, you have extra AoE from Chain Harvest. You're going to get AoE in Liquid Magma Totem because you're not running Storm Elemental, and we're still keeping Stormkeeper for extra AoE as well. And if you get a proc on your tier set, not your tier set, sorry. If you get a proc on Ascendance with your legendary, then this becomes Lava Beam, and Stormkeeper enhanced Lava Beams are nuts. They're so, so good. So, here's the rotation. You must start with Fire Ellie, because he's going to keep your Flame Shocks out longer. That's why Fire Ellie is so important. He's really critical to the build. You want to keep your Flame Shocks rolling as long as possible so that you don't actually have to hard cast Flame Shock. You can just rely on Chain Harvest to get your Flame Shocks out, and then you're just spending Lava Burst as much as possible. So we're going to go Fire Elemental into Chain Harvest, into Liquid Magma Totem, into Stormkeeper. Then I'm going to wait on Stormkeeper for a second and try to send out some Lava Burst. I'm going to have a Lava Surge proc by then. And I'm going to fish for an Ascendance proc, and if I get one, then we're going to spend the Stormkeeper Chain Lightnings, which will now be Lava Beams. We're going to spend those Lava Beams, and you'll see it in a second. If I don't get a proc on Ascendance, I'm not going to let Stormkeeper just run out. I'm going to spend the Super Juice Chain Lightnings instead, and then obviously spend them on Earthquake. So you're not going to lose that buff. But if you do get an Ascendance proc, you can spend it on Lava Beam instead of Chain Lightning, which does way more damage. So that's the idea. So here we go. Ready? Fire Ellie into Harvest into Magma Totem. Ready? Fire Ellie into Harvest. Here we go. Stormkeeper. We're going to go Lava Burst here. Fishing for a proc. Fishing for a proc. Haven't got one. We're going to spend one of our Chain Lightnings. Fishing for a proc. Didn't get one. Chain Lightning again. There we go. So we didn't get one there, but that's okay. That's how it works. If we did get one, hopefully you'll see it over. There's a proc. We got a proc on Ascendance right now. We're not going to cast Lava Beam, actually, unless we have a Stormkeeper buff when we get a proc like that. But there's the first Ascendance proc. There's another one. Look at all those meatballs. Like, that's what it looks like. It also refreshes our Flame Shocks, which means we don't have to press Flame Shock again, ever. On top of that, because we're pressing Lava Burst so much, we are extending the duration of our Fire Elemental. Sorry, not Storm Elemental. This is why pressing Lava Burst is so good, because first of all, it just does more damage because of our tier set bonus. Every Lava Burst is 20% stronger, right? And then if we get an Ascendance proc, it's even better. We have Stormkeeper. We're going to press it. Okay, we're fishing. We're fishing for a proc here. Fish, 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 fish. Fishing for an Ascendance proc. Not getting one. We'll cast one Chain Lightning right now. Waiting on the last Chain Lightning. Fishing for a proc. Didn't get one. Oh, we got one! There's a Lava Beam right there. Sorry if you didn't see that, but we did get one there, and we got a Lava Beam proc, which was really cool. You can see the damage is exceptional. It's actually good. I think people were worried about the damage of me pressing Lava Burst in a AoE scenario. It's actually okay. Again, because we're getting that supplemental AoE from... Why is it invalid? What the heck? There, we got a proc again. Refreshed all our Flame Shocks. Refreshed all of our Flame Shocks back to their max duration. They're all doing more damage as well because of the Fire Elemental, But really, we just care about Flame Shocks being active so that we can continue to press Lava Burst, which you can see we're continuing to do over and over again. There's another proc. Chain Harvest is coming back. We actually have... We're going to get one Lava Beam in here from Stormkeeper. See? See how I cheated there? My Ascendance was running out, and so I got one Chain... Lava Beam in there. Not Chain Lightning, because it turned into Lava Beam, of course. And our Stormkeeper's running out, so I'm going to press my Chain Lightning so that I don't waste it. You don't ever want to waste it. There's a proc on Ascendance. Our Fire Elemental's all the way around again. He's permanent. So we just cast him again just for the fun of it. And you can see we keep pressing Lava Burst, baby. Keep pressing Lava Burst. This is all about the fire. Let's try one more proc. There it is. There's the last proc. Earthquake. And there you go. You can see we'll do one more Chain Harvest here just to give you guys an idea of what it's like. We're basically maintaining 20k. If you can see that, we're maintaining 20k while pressing Lava Burst mostly in an AoE situation, and we're continuing to fish for those procs. We're going to have one more Stormkeeper buff here. I'll just show you if we can get a true proc on that. That'd be really, really fun. Here comes Stormkeeper. Lava Burst, Lava Burst, Lava Burst. Don't spend the Chain Lightnings yet. Be patient. Okay, we're going to spend one of them. Running out of time here. 6, 5, 4, 3. Fishing. 2. Didn't get it. We got one. There's our Lava Beam. We got one at the very end. Did you see that? Isn't that cool? Okay. We're gonna run. Our Ellie is, of course, permanent. So you saw multiple times there in the fight that we actually got Lava Beam procs. And you can see the regular Lava Beam isn't super great. It's only doing almost 1%. But the Lava Beam Overload doing 2.2% all on its own. The Chain Lightning Overload is there because we got to cast it, more times. But that's the fun part of Stormkeeper, is that even if you don't get a proc on Ascendance to initiate the Lava Beam Overload, Chain Lightning Overload still does plenty of damage and obviously gets you to Earthquake right away. But Lava Beam's just stronger. It just ends up doing more damage. And because it jumps and it gains damage each time. Chain Lightning doesn't gain any damage each time it jumps. It just jumps to multiple enemies. So that's like the fun little fishing that you're going for. I think you need to take Stormkeeper to supplement the AoE damage there to maintain that strong AoE presence. I think if you take Ascendance, your pack-to-pack-to-pack AoE damage actually just gets a little bit too low. Sure, every 3 minutes you've got a nice big juicy Ascendance. You can do Chain Harvest into Ascendance, which is fantastic, but Stormkeeper is just like better on pack-to-pack-to-pack damage, and it feels really, really good. And over the course of a dungeon, you're going to be getting so many procs on Ascendance that you're going to have lots of opportunities to get those Lava Beams in there and get a Lava Beam Overload going. So I actually think that for lots of reasons, Stormkeeper is the better takeaway there. So that's the gameplay. How many times did we trigger? We triggered Ascendance 8 times. 8 Ascendance triggers in a 3-minute and 40-second fight. 8 Ascendance procs. Do you see that? That's insane. That means we sent out... Look how many... Look at the Lava Burst damage that we did. It was close to the Earthquake damage that we did in an AoE situation. This is what I'm talking about. We only cast Lava Burst 105 times, but we got 40 extra hits on Lava Burst. 40 meatballs being sent out because of Ascendance. This is what I'm talking about. This isn't even the most amount of targets. We're missing a target here. You can have 6 Flame Shocks out, right? So you could have a potential of hitting 6 targets with the Ascendance procs. But this is the playstyle that this build supports. It basically says, okay, we're going all in on Lava Burst. We're going all in on this thing. We take Echo the Elements. We have our Tier Set bonus giving us 20% more Lava Burst damage. Lava Burst extends our Fire Elemental. Our Fire Elemental supplements our damage by keeping Flame Shocks alive, keeping all the Flame Shocks up, making the Flame Shocks do more damage. On top of that, if we do get a proc on Ascendance, it's going to add our crit onto our Lava Burst damage again. So it's not just doing 20% more, it's doing 37% more. If I had more crit, it would be like 40, 45% more damage on every single Lava Burst. Every single time your Lava Burst triggers, it sends out a meatball at somebody with Flame Shock on them, and that meatball is going to do 45% more damage. Do you see the combination that I'm talking about here? All these other things, Fire Nova or Fire Elemental, Chain Harvest, they enable this build to work. You get free Flame Shocks. He keeps all the Flame Shocks out for longer. And then your AoE damage is here. You have Stormkeeper, Liquid Magma, and Chain Harvest. Liquid Magma doing 4% of our damage again. Stormkeeper gives us huge chain lightning overloads and sometimes gives us huge lava beam overloads if you're fishing for it, right? And then your last part of your AoE is shored up by the procs from Ascendance, and the damage is good. It's perfectly fine. Tons of earthquake damage, but tons of lava burst damage as well, because it's triggering and hitting all of those enemies that have flame shocks on them. So this, I think, is the premier way to play Deeply Rooted Elements, and I think the only realistic way that Deeply Rooted Elements is going to make it into the next patch. I think for Enhancement Shaman, it's unfortunately just not as easy to trigger the main ability as it is for Ellie Shaman. Ellie Shaman can just trigger Lava Bursts like crazy because of your Mastery. That's why I'm focused so heavily on Mastery. That's why I'm running Theatar to get 550 Mastery, so that every single time I cast Lava Burst, every single time Lava Burst triggers from Ascendance, it has a really high chance of triggering again, of sending out an additional meatball, and that meatball is, of course, juiced by all the other things in our kit here. 20% damage here, another 17% damage from Ascendance. You see what I'm talking about? That's how it all kind of works together, and I think Deeply Rooted works really, really well for Ellie Shaman. Unfortunately, it doesn't work as well for Enhancement Shaman. So that's the gameplay. Let me look really quickly at where do you want to craft this. Of course, it's the same spot as last time. You're going to want to craft it on your wrist, because that doesn't interfere with your tier set bonus at all. It doesn't interfere with the Belt of Unity here, the Clasp of Unity. It doesn't interfere with anything else, and you need all these other pieces of gear. If you don't, this build doesn't really work until you have the tier set and until you have double legendaries. It just doesn't really work. So that's unfortunate, but it's you know, about a month into this patch, this build will work and you can use it. So excuse me. That is Deeply Rooted Elements in a nutshell. I think that it's actually strong, and you guys are going to see when I do the tier set, not the tier set, the tier list tomorrow. That video is going to include this Deeply Rooted Elements build, and you're going to see where it sort of lines up on my DPS tier list that I'm doing. But I think it's got a place. I think you have to go Venthyr. I think you could either go Liquid Magma Totem or Master. It doesn't really matter. You need to go Echo the Elements, and then you have to press Lava Burst in an AoE situation. And don't be afraid to do that, because it'll give you what you're looking for. It'll give you the extra AoE damage from Ascendance when it procs. It will do what you want it to do. It will. You have to trust. You have to trust it, because it will work. But yeah, that's Deeply Rooted Elements, guys. That's the build. Let me know what you think in the comments below. The next video that I'm doing is, of course, going to be the tier list. Everybody's been waiting for this. So we are done with all the builds now, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we're done with them. So we've done the enhancement builds. We did Doomwind, Witch Doctor, Primal, Legacy, Deeply Rooted, and we also did Skybreakers for Enhanced. Then we did Skybreakers for Ellie, we did Echoes, we did Windspeaker, and we've done Deeply Rooted Elements for Elemental Shaman. Those are all the builds that we've done. I've talked about which covenants you want to pick alongside all of those legendaries heading into 9.2. The next video that we're doing is a tier list. I'm going to stack all of these builds up against each other. I'm going to tell you where do they fit in on the tier list, okay? And I'm really, really excited. I've actually been working on the tier list video for like a couple days now, because I got to make all these little icons that fit into the thing. And anyway, it's going to be really good. I hope you guys are excited about that video. Thank you so much for watching Deeply Rooted. Thank you so much for the comments and all of the conversations down there. Thank you so much for subscribing and for liking the videos. I would appreciate it if you guys keep doing that. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.